Hey everybody, John Ray with Musing Wizard here. You of course know Carl Brockman, and we are going to be going deep into the belly of the beast. What are the subconscious thoughts coming out on the Musing Wizard Twitter account? The reason that I started that Twitter account was to provide insight into the things that are working for me as I build a business, as I strengthen and sharpen my skills as an entrepreneur, as I look to incorporate some kind of wizardry and magic into the practical world and ground that there. And the Twitter account, like many Twitter accounts, has kind of been a journal of what's working for me, what doesn't work for me, the things that I want to be reminded of. And then hopefully those tweets or X's or whatever we're calling them now have a ripple effect to them. And the interesting thing that I've always found in my life is that when you are expressing yourself authentically and speaking about the things that you're passionate about and finding language for that, language is code. It's how you program the matrix, and you will create a tractor beam that calls in like-minded and like-hearted people. And so one of the reasons that we're doing this podcast and this video series is because we're interested in connecting with like-hearted people. So let us know in the comments if that's you, and we will be unpacking some of those insights that I've had over the last couple of months, and really diving into what the heck did that actually mean. So Carl, you're our tweet curator today, and I'll turn it over to you.
Jonathan Ray, thanks for having me as always. What a blessing, you know. I get to wake up. It's Saturday here today. The sun is shining after a week of rain, and I get to speak to this lovely looking man in Austin, Texas, about some nuggets that this wizard avatar has put on X. And I just can't imagine a better start to my day. I feel very gracious and grateful to be here. And just a sidebar for a second, like-hearted. I haven't heard that term before. That's really nice.
That's what we're aiming for.
Yeah, baby. Yeah. So thank you. I would love to, again, if you didn't see the last episode, we unpacked some of the nuggets or the stream of consciousness from John Ray in this space. I would love to continue here. And there's one that jumped right out at me. It was the first one on my list. I just didn't think it was the best place to start. And let's start here today. It's probably a one that might not land with a lot of individuals that read it, because if you look at the words and their, I guess, broad definition, then they just seem to contradict each other. So tell me, John, quote, "Imagination is the only reality," end quote.
Well, that's going to be the whole episode, but
Well, let's go. Let's do it.
Yeah, so this concept that imagination is the only reality is somewhat a borrowed idea from Neville Goddard. So Neville Goddard was kind of a mystic who led a lot of different conferences and kind of this backyard church in, I don't know, the 40s, maybe earlier than that. But he was like a new thought teacher, and Neville Goddard talked frequently about how our consciousness goes through basically the same experience that Christ went through, and that we're kind of living out the archetype of Christ, and that we are in. He didn't call it a simulation, but he basically talked about it the way that we now, having computers, talk about simulations, and we're in this reality experience that is responding to us and is catalyzing us into an elevation in consciousness. And we think that when we make a choice, that was our free will choice, but what he believed was that there was all of this unconscious or conscious energy that had been practiced in our dreams, that had been practiced in the thought space, that created kind of electrical impulses that would then drive us into action. And so in the moment of taking the action, there really isn't anything other that we could have chosen, because everything in our lives has kind of culminated to an electrical impulse that makes us take that action. And so you're actually pre-paving what those actions will be before you take the action at a psychic level. And so if we look at like particle experiments in quantum physics, where when they're shooting particles through a double slit, the particles behave both as particles but also as waves. Well, waves are basically our decision space. It's what do we have access to choosing in each moment. And each of those decisions is weighted out with a probability, from 10% to 100%. And based on what we're doing psychically, mentally, emotionally, based on our past experiences and how that maps onto our nervous system, based on what we're refusing to feel and what we're open to feeling, that basically structures how that particle wave collapses into what ultimately becomes an impulse that we think is a choice. But was it a choice is the question, or was that the result of all of these dots connecting in the background that ultimately collapse itself into an electrical impulse that we then take as action? And so imagination being the only reality is this concept that you can't make a decision other than the decision you're going to make in this moment. But in future moments, you can change the way that all of those electrical and emotional impulses render themselves in your body, which will allow you to take actions that are different than the ones that you're taking now. And so, in order to change something, you have to first see it in your mind. This is setting the attention. This is pre-paving it. And so the choice doesn't happen at a physical level. The choice always happens in the imagination, and the imagination then dictates to the reality plane what actions will show up as a result of that. So imagination is the only reality is basically saying all of the programming happens at the imagination level. That imagination then filters down into the bioenergetics of the body. The bioenergetics of the body then render the reality around us. And then the actions that we take are just inspired based on all of those things coming together. So the in the moment choice that you're making is probably not as free will a choice as you thought. However, the lead up, the imagination lead up to you choosing something like that is a choice, and that's why free will only exists in the imagination.
A lot to unpack there. A lot to unpack there. Yeah, I think it's really interesting to understand that, well, at any given time, in any given situation, in any given context, it is all of the minute macro experiences mixed in with your own DNA and your history through how you came to be as a human that dictates, well, what is the best course of action here. Again, so you think about it as probability, right? Like last time I went and hit on a girl at a bar, she threw a drink in my face. And now I see this beautiful girl at the bar. Well, all of the data up to this point suggests that I'm going to get a drink thrown in my face. So perhaps it isn't whether this is a conscious conversation that you have or whether it's just and then you move away. It's those experiences up to that point that again dictate and give us the illusion that, well, I'm deciding now that it's not worth going to speak to that beautiful lady. But if I was to flex the imagination muscle, I was to project myself into the future and think about the man or the woman that I am becoming or want to become, and that man is someone who doesn't waste the opportunity to speak to that beautiful girl at the bar, then that gives me more data. It weighs the probability into a different state where, no, it is worth that I go say hi and introduce myself. Hey, I'm Carl. Nice to meet you. Even if I do get another drink thrown in my face, there's plenty of beautiful women sitting at the bar that I'll get the chance to speak to again in the future. Is that kind of what you're alluding to there, John?
That's part of it. And the other part of it is you're always going to attract the experience designed to trigger where the emotional block in you is. So if you get a drink thrown in your face, getting the drink thrown in your face is not the relevant part. How it makes you feel is the relevant part. So you may feel rejected, could be one way that you feel. You may feel really angry at women, and that's probably the more important feeling. And so you need to be conscious of what are you feeling in each moment, because that's showcasing where you have energy that doesn't serve the intentions that you're putting forward. And so if that's anger, then you have to feel through that anger. You want to trace that anger back to when are all the times that I felt this way towards women? My last girlfriend, my school teacher, my mom, that may be the linear path. And so then you have to feel through times in your life where you maybe didn't have the tools to feel through that, or oftentimes we got so drunk or wasted that we use that as an escape from the emotions, and then those emotions just solidify in our system. And so then we're going to keep attracting experiences like that until we experience the emotion of it. Once that emotion isn't there anymore, people aren't going to throw drinks in our face anymore. So how do we shift emotion? There's two ways to do it. One is, in response to reality, I can just feel my feelings. This is the simplest and most basic way to just clear your nervous system. And I'm a broken record because it's the only piece of advice that I have. So we know that way. Let's talk about a different way that is effective, but not as effective as that. It is imagining the scenario differently. So Neville Goddard had a process that he called revision or revisioning. And basically the way that it works is, when you're going to sleep at night, you remember your day not as it happened, but as you wish it would have happened. And you start to trick your brain into thinking that it lived a life that it didn't live. And then all future choices are based on that data input, not the actual input. And so you've curled your brow at me before in the past when I was like, well, we don't even know if our history is real or if we just invented it in the moment. And where a bold statement like that stems from is the idea of revision. People all the time in the positive thought movement recognize, and to some extent will agree, that you can change the way that you think about the future, and that it will change the way that the future shows up. But because people are so rooted in a linear concept of time, which doesn't actually exist, they don't give as much credence to the fact that you can change your past. And Neville Goddard believed that through the process of revision, you could actually tangibly change the way that reality rendered itself as an input from the past. Because what is the past? It's just data. And so the data input is only important in how it manifests in the present, because there's only ever the present moment. So this is a controversial thing to talk about because everybody wants to drag the whole freaking history of everything forward with them. They're walking with an elephant on their back all the time. It's why they can't get anything done ever. But if you can just release all that baggage and recognize that none of it was real, really, the only part of it is that was real is how it makes you feel right now. So feel through how you think the past was. You're assuming that you know that it was real because you can access all of those memories. But how do you know that you didn't just wake up in a computer algorithm that gave you all those memories? You don't. And so that gives you a little bit of a permission slip to play around with the idea of, what if I remembered it differently? And so, yes, there are plenty of reasons that we want to remember things the way that they actually happened, because we don't want to become delusional people. And that's why this has to be very carefully paired with the feeling stuff, because you need to feel what actually happened first, to the point where it no longer triggers you, at which point you can practice the past. Or you can practice, if you need to create some separation, you can practice a version of the past that was different, and just start giving yourself a different data endpoint of who you are as a person. Because oftentimes, if we're not a hyper-conscious person that knows how to be super present in the moment, we're making who we are now who we are in the past. Like we're all of the data from the past is determining who we are now, and that's not who we are. We're whoever we decide to be in each moment. And even if we've done bad things in the past, we can always come to a place of forgiveness of self and redemption. And then we have to feel through all the guilt that we have. Like, the reason that we have incarceration is to create a container for you to maybe have to feel the guilt that you have. And then on the other side of feeling that, you actually upgrade yourself into somebody who doesn't want to be capable of that anymore. You recognize your dark side, but by feeling through your guilt and allowing God or yourself or whoever to forgive you, you now get to move forward vibrationally clean. This is essentially what forgiveness in the New Testament and in Christianity is all about. It's about you feeling through the guilt that you have, which what is an emotion? It's just showing you that you're too rooted in the past and you're not actually present. And so the way that you actually get present is you feel through all of that data that's showing up as bioenergetics to the point of balance. And now from that balance point where you're no longer feel that guilt because you allowed it to play itself out, you learned your lesson, you had an intellectual and an emotional upgrade from feeling through that. And on the other side of that, you get to choose from the new stated upgrade. And so imagination is one way that you can structure the data input that you have on who you are as a person. And you can practice your future self, you can practice your past self. You in aspectology, you're practicing parallel versions of yourself. So you're bringing in qualities of versions of yourself that exist in parallel realities. So it's a version of you that's in this exact same scenario, but it's choosing differently. So in aspectology, you just call that into you. You get insight from that version of you. These are all permission slips to use imagination to structure reality and to inspire the emotions within you that will render that reality and actually give you the impulse to do the thing that actually serves you.
Yeah, if the emotion isn't felt, then your imagination can only continue to imagine the same perception of the experience that you've already had.
Right.
And
It's why affirmations without somatic work don't work.
Yeah.
Because if you're saying an affirmation that
It's a
you don't
lie.
believe because you have trauma locked in your system, you'll actually manifest the opposite of it because you don't believe what you're saying.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I played around with affirmations a couple of years ago, and it was like, yeah, I am rich, and yeah, I am handsome, and yeah, like they just didn't land. There was nothing to them, and
Right. And
and
so the way to use affirmations is, and all dreams really, is you state your dream out loud and then you ask yourself, do I feel capable of this? Is there would this trigger a problem? Do I feel worthy of this? And then you feel through that to the point where you can say it out loud and be like, yeah, of course, I'm already that.
yeah,
And that's the point when it can come into reality.
or see it as a misaligned affirmation, like
Right. Or you
the
recognize that you wanted that for the wrong reasons.
yeah, absolutely. And I think you also shed some light on like our memory, our experiences up to this point. It's just our perception of what happened too. So
When you go to court or when you talk to detectives or police officers, they'll tell you that eyewitness testimony is the most flawed testimony because nobody remembers things the way it actually happened. You remembered it how it was filtered through your nervous system, because your nervous system is the antenna that takes the data in. So eyewitness testimony is the most unreliable testimony there is because everybody's memory is flawed and everybody is just pulling in the data in a way that serves the narrative that they're currently running.
I always get this analogy wrong. It's another arrow in the quiver. I always say it's another string on the bow, but that makes absolutely no sense. But it's another arrow in the quiver for how important conscious work is, right? And how important it is to, again, sitting with oneself is one example of this, but to look inward. Everything starts inward. Life is a mirror. And
you do all of these things in a spirit of play. So what does a kid do? They have imaginary friends. They make up stuff. They're like, oh, here, I just made you a pizza. And you're like, that's a piece of cardboard. They're so good at inventing and practicing the reality that they want. And we just have to become children again and be playful in that way and live in a spirit of imagination where we're literally practicing the things that we desire, that we want. And if you have this kind of playfulness in your relationships, either as a salesperson, as a boss, in your romantic relationships, like if you practice the type of playfulness that you think a child would practice, and you pair that, with really choosing the thing that you want to choose in that moment rather than the thing that's safe, you will build such intense polarity with people that everybody wants to be around you. And that's what charismatic people are. That's actually what flirting is. It's living on that edge of danger where you're like, normally you're not supposed to say this, but I'm going to say it. And so, that's the fun and the danger is when you're somatically clear, right where that line is that you can get to that will create the exact tension point that is required for peak polarity.
And yeah, like you alluded to earlier, how you see it is always how it manifests. We at the
It's
visceral.
how you feel about how you see it is how it manifests. So if you see it and then you feel bad about what you see, you're going to attract the way that you feel about it, not necessarily what you're seeing.
Right.
But the interesting thing is, and the paradox of it is, if you stare at the thing you want long enough, you will slowly shed all of the feelings about it that don't serve you, and then you'll actually be able to feel about it the way that you want to feel about it. And so in many ways, affirmations, when taken to the extreme, if you're really bringing in a somatic experience, you can say, I'm rich, I'm wealthy, I'm a billionaire. And over time, you will trigger yourself often enough to release the energy that says you're not those things.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I've played around again, so I do a lot of work with business owners and men, and yeah, affirmations I might come back to. I might play around with again, but I see so much value in just answering the question, like, what is success to you? What does your ideal business look like? What does your ideal life look like? Again, it gives us something to look at, something to pay attention to. It gives us a destination in which we set
Yeah.
sail. And
And it's
again,
also a Trojan horse for your nervous system, because when you ask the question like that, you don't have to acknowledge that you don't believe you are that.
yeah,
So it is good. Like you want to find ways to talk about the things that you want without being totally triggered by them. It's one of the, like Abraham Hicks in their book, Ask and It Is Given, has a bunch of different processes at the back, and one of them is the wouldn't it be nice exercise, or wouldn't it be nice if exercise. So it may be hard for me to say I have a beach house that has a beautiful patio and an infinity pool, and I love reading where the bell from whom the bell toll, or whatever why can't I think of the name of that book, while I'm looking out over the ocean. So when I say that, I may not be able to actually believe that, but my nervous system will totally accept, wouldn't it be nice if I had a pool by the ocean with an infinity pool? Because of course it would be nice. And so it's a way to ease into the vibrational state of practicing that without having to do a hard affirmation that you might totally reject in the moment.
yeah. And what's the consequence of not playing this game and not playing with imagination and not thinking into the future and not looking inward? Well, suddenly you might come into some money, you might come into an opportunity, you might come into something external that your now focus moves to, and you start unconsciously or consciously working towards that, which will present another thing along that path. And then suddenly 10 years down the track, I started a business for freedom and flexibility and time with my family. But now I'm so stressed. I've got 20 people working for me. Yeah, might have a lot of money, but I have no time or even space to enjoy the freedom and abundance that comes with that. And I'm in this belly of the beast again. I'm in this catalysm in which I need to, where did it all go wrong? Well, it's
Right.
because I wasn't consciously focusing on, I guess, the thing important to me. I was
Right.
just
If you're
chasing.
not the visionary of your life, you will work for somebody who is. And that's basically how it works, is you either see the life that you want and you get up to speed with it, or somebody else who has a better vision than you is going to pull you into theirs. And this is kind of to some extent where we get back into the conversation of like pendulums and energy structure. Like when you're building out a holographic vision, you're building an energy structure that's calling things to it. Thoughts are things in that way. They have a vibrational attraction. They're like magnets. And so the more attention that you give to something, the more that you're energizing that pendulum that is then calling in like experiences.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I'm just reflecting on my journey. One of the things when I started this business that I was so passionate about was that I only want to work with people that I find interesting, great, fun, high energy, open-minded. And yeah, that's meant that I've said no to perhaps some on paper things I should have said yes to, or a past me would have said yes to. But the reality is that I spend 95% of my job with people in a very constructive, collaborative, fun, engaging environment that just compounds energy. I had like 8 back-to-backs yesterday and I was exhausted at the end of the day. I was just on the couch, just absolutely dead. But every single time I started my new session, I was up, I was in, I was ready to go. It just pulled me straight back into the present moment. And what an absolute blessing. And I wouldn't trade that for $1 billion. And by me focusing on that, I continue to attract that, right? Like
Yeah.
there is an abundance of these people that I'm able to engage with. And that has been my focus. And again, that's been my imagination, and that has manifested and continues to manifest. And what an absolute blessing. But if I didn't at the start of this run round, if I didn't at the start say, well, what's important to me? What do I want to create? And really unpack that, then I would have just focused on $1 million. I would
Yeah.
have just focused on the business that I see someone else successful have, and okay, that's when I'll feel good about myself. I'll just go there. And like you said, now I'm living their imagination.
Yeah.
I'm living this prescribed like a pill imagination rather than my own discerning vision of the future.
Totally. And so to get back to the tweet, imagination is the only reality. That's where you get to practice what the next step is going to be. In the moment, it's already too late. You're already enacting the bioenergetics of what you practiced in the moment before. But in each moment you can prepave, and that's an imaginary activity. And so when I say imagination is the only reality, it's really that your reality is always the makeup of what you consistently think and feel. And once you recognize that, you can be more aware of what you're thinking and feeling and deciding, is that what you want to send into the feedback loop of reality?
All right, you've convinced me. Let's dive into another one, and we touched on this a little bit. I love how, so I've got this list, right? I've pulled out these lists, and even in the last one it seemed as though each linked together so perfectly, as if I had planned the list to be structured this way. And I just find that so incredible. So we'll dive into this next one, which is just a little bit longer, but bear with me, I'll do my best to articulate it well. Quote: reality bumps you to see if you'll, one, react unconsciously, or two, feel the feeling being triggered fully without reaction. The latter grows your nervous system, and if you succeed in the bump, the upgrade is yours. I love how you use your like game analogy and reference in your tweets and your language. I just think it's a great way to see and view and play life. You know,
Yeah.
there's a great book, to digress, called Prime to Perform by Dr. Neil Doshi and Dr. Lindsay McGregor. And they went into all of these massive corporate companies to understand, well, what motivates people? What makes people do a better job or a worse job? And they're able to boil down their findings into 6 motivators. There were 3 extrinsic motivators and then 3 intrinsic motivators. To no surprise to me anyway, the 3 extrinsic ones diminished performance and the 3 intrinsic ones improved performance. And to go up the ladder, the most negatively impactful motivator to performance was inertia.
Mm.
And that was, I'm just coming to work because I came the day before. It is just this, it's just the path that I'm just walking, and that is just it for me. The second was economic pressure. It was, oh, I need, it's like lack, it's survival. I need to make this money to have dinner tonight. Or I've paid for this expensive car. I need to keep the payments up on this BMW that I can't really afford if I think about it. And of course, diminishes performance. The least diminishing performance factor was emotional pressure. And this was almost net zero, but it was a little bit lower. And this is, oh, well, I don't want to let my mum down. I don't want to let dad down. I don't want to let my boss down. And again, if you think about leaders, and I'm sure leaders in your life, John, definitely leaders in mine, and whoever's listening, leaders in yours, you see so many leaders that lean on emotional pressure, or they lean on economic pressure as a motivator. And of course, you're not going to perform at a higher level because you are focusing on the wrong thing, to go back to focus. And then there's the three intrinsic ones. The least positive influencer was potential. So if I do well here, it might mean that I can do this next, or I can get this job, or I can afford this house. It is intrinsic because that is imagination. It's what could it mean? What it wouldn't it be nice if? The second most powerful was purpose, and
Mm.
that was I see the outcome of the work. I am fulfilled by it. It fills my cup, and therefore I can do a good job. And the last one, and the most powerful motivator, was play.
Mm.
I enjoy doing the work. I am engaged and captivated and present, and are in flow from doing the work. And to bring it back to like your game reference, like, well, what is this if it's not a game? Are you just the little NPC that sells salmon at the corner shop on the first island, or are you the guy that's like, yeah, I'm gonna buy that salmon and I'm gonna uh, put it on the fire and then sell it as cooked salmon, and then I'm gonna make this money, and then I'm gonna buy a axe to cut down these trees over here, and now I'm gonna go face the dragon because I bought some armor, and then anyway,
Right. What's it? I think that's called main character energy, right? Like,
yeah,
so
yeah.
when you're acting like the main character in your script, then that is an optimal position to be in. Because we talked in the last one about a ship in motion is easier to turn. Well, in this tweet, what I'm talking about with the bump is what I used to call it. Like, reality is going to give you the bump anytime you start to move forward in a new direction than you're used to. Reality is going to give you the bump. Why? Well, you haven't been practicing the new reality much, and so there's still a bit of a vibrational rift. But two, reality is basically saying, look, you still have stuff in your nervous system that prevents you from flowing the higher frequency reality that you want to step into. And from a physics level, we can't put you in that higher frequency opportunity until you've shed some of the base level energies that you've had. So we're bumping you right now to show you exactly where in your nervous system the stuck energy is. Just like an acupuncturist puts their needle where the energy needs to move, you get bumped when you decide to do something bigger than what you're doing right now. And then you just have to feel through that. And so you can get so comfortable with this process that you can just infinitely be upgrading. But it requires you to recognize that every time you dream a little bit bigger, there's going to be a tiny or a big bump, depending on how big of a leap the dream is. That shows you where the energy in your nervous system that doesn't serve the new dream is. You feel through that, and then that allows you to move up. Now, this is going to be a much slower process if you're on drugs, alcohol, and caffeine, because it just slows down your ability to reduce and release all of the noise in your nervous system. So if you're in a period of your life where you feel like you're consistently just getting bumped the F out, that could be because you're eating too much sugar, you're on drugs and alcohol, you're drinking too much caffeine, and so that energy that wants to escape doesn't have the release channel. And if you will reduce those substances, then you're going to get a real big bump because it's going to feel so frustrating for about 3 days. But if you can feel through all of that, like that's really when the upgrade will come through.
I really don't want to stop drinking coffee, John. I really don't.
Me neither. And you know, it's an internal conversation that I'm having right now because I recognize that I'm very busy right now, and so then I end up relying more on caffeine. I had quit coffee altogether, but it never fails that if I get too busy, I'm like, oh, I'll have 1 cup. And then because I'm an addict, I'll have 2 cups. And then because it's my only vice that I have left, I'm like, I'll have 4 cups.
Yeah, at least I'm not doing cocaine anymore. You know, like
exactly. And you know, but I am recognizing to myself right now, I'm drinking too much caffeine. And the way that I know I'm drinking too much caffeine is because I'm experiencing more bumps than usual. And they're small, they're tiny, and then I feel through them. And so it's not like it's hugely impactful, but when you're 100% tuned to your nervous system, your intuition, your gut feeling, your signal that you're sending out into the world, like all of these things are just more impactful and they move more quickly, and you're able to process things faster. And so keep drinking caffeine if you want to drink caffeine, but without caffeine, maybe it takes you 5 minutes to process through a big feeling. On caffeine, it may take an hour or longer. And so just know that if there's a trade-off there, you're gonna have to carve out more time to sit with your feelings if you're drinking a bunch of caffeine or on stimulants.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely spot on. And I guess it might not be the right call for one to cut out all of their vices at once. You know, I don't know if that's
Right.
even
It
a
definitely is. And if you don't want to go through
expectation.
what they call the dark night of the soul, like if you give up everything cold turkey, like that's why people have physical tremors. I mean, it's why methadone clinics
Right.
exist. Like at a chemical level, you're going to have an incredible reaction that you probably don't like. But at a psychological and emotional level, you're also going to have all the feelings that you've been avoiding coming up at the same time. And so, you know, you could argue that actually is the best way to just rip the Band-Aid off. You know, but you have to recognize that if you've been avoiding your emotions for years and years and years, your whole life is going to change when you do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's also important to note that, yeah, drugs, food, caffeine, which is obviously a drug, aren't the only vices. You know, like for me, I remember at one stage I was off the hamster wheel of destroying my life on the weekend, and I replaced that escapism or that connection with video games and smoking weed. And yeah, like you could argue that, well, it's better than what you were doing, Carl. And I probably shouldn't have even admitted to doing the solution to it. But I didn't. I guess I upgraded. If I was to look back, yeah, I definitely upgraded. I was able to actually get to a point where I dug out. I didn't elevate out of the hole, but I was digging out, and perhaps it could have taken a lot quicker if I was to observe that, to feel that, and to like to upgrade in that way rather than just replace.
Yeah, well, maybe, or maybe you just went at the speed that you needed to go at. I mean, it took me 10 years before I actually got sober, but I was always taking like small steps and trying it
Yeah.
on and playing with the energy of it. And so you go at the speed that you go. And that's why imagination is the only reality, because you're going to choose whatever you choose. And if you haven't practiced vividly a life without drugs, alcohol, and caffeine, it may be too big of a leap for you to even make that choice. You know, the impulse is going to be too strong. This is what drug addicts, you know, experience all the time. And so the thing to do is practice what the life you want outside of that is. And too often when people get sober, what they end up practicing is how bad their life is going to suck when they don't get to
Yeah.
hang out with any of the people that they want to hang out with, when they don't get to escape in that way, when they don't get to go to the bars and just like completely cut loose. Well, they're just using the substance to cut loose. You can still do that. I do it all the time now, but you have to practice that you can do it without the substance. The substance is training wheels. Yeah, it's showcasing that you can be the life of the party, but you don't need alcohol to do it. You can be the life of the party without it. And you may want to be the life of the party because what you really want is deep connection with people. And so when you get off the drugs and alcohol and feel all your big feelings, you recognize that actually it's more meaningful to have deep connections with a handful of people than it is to have super shallow connections with 1,000 people. And sometimes you want a combination of both, because sometimes it is just fun to be in group ecstasis together. But you can have those things without substances. You have to practice them in your imagination. You have to be able to see that it's possible.
Feel that it's possible.
Right. Exactly. You have to be able to see it in your mind and not have a visceral reaction that you're lying to yourself.
Yeah, yeah. And that's why I wanted to point to, yeah, perhaps it's not it doesn't have to be all or nothing. You know, we all have our own individual path and journey to walk. And if you're one that has the awareness that they are quite stuck and they're leaning on a lot of vices, then don't put it all in a box of these are all of the things that I have to fix. And if I don't fix them all, then there's no point. It's, well, no, you can make progress. Life is compounding interest. Well, for me anyway, I know some people do change their lives by going to a mountain by themselves for 6 weeks and coming back a new man and buying a farm and completely leaving their corporate life. Yeah, sure. Like that could be your journey too, but your journey is your journey. It's unique to you, and how you see it and how you feel it obviously will dictate
Right.
moving forward. But
And
it's not.
and a lot of times people, as they're trying to practice this new reality that they want to be in, they just leave the old reality behind because they're
Yeah,
like, oh, I'll just leave that behind. But that doesn't work. You're going to just manifest the same energy in different people. And it's why if you're working a 12-step program, steps 8 and 9 are super important, which are the make amends steps. Like you want to integrate with your current reality, and people don't talk as often as they should about this, but the 12-step program is a great way for you to trigger everything that you need to feel. That really, it should really be called 12 steps to feeling your feelings, because when you have to go and make amends with people that you've wronged, as an alcoholic, that's a lot of people. And it's incredibly uncomfortable. But what is the fastest way to get through those feelings? To confront them head on. And that's what making amends is about. It has nothing to do with the person you're making amends with, and everything to do with you having to feel the discomfort of doing it.
yeah, spot on. For some reason, I don't know if it'll land as effectively if it was called 12 Steps to Feeling Your Feelings. But hey, maybe they can play with the title. Maybe they can. Maybe we can get
Right.
to a stage where that will
We'll,
land well.
we'll get there. But it is one of the reasons that, like, when you go to AA meetings, there a lot of times you'll see what they call old timers there, and these are people that have been sober for 40 years, but they're mean people. They're white knuckling their sobriety. They're not
Right.
happy, and it's because they've never engaged the emotional side of the process.
Yeah. Yeah. They're surviving.
Yes.
They're yeah.
And they basically just traded substance addiction for AA addiction. Like, a lot of people are addicted to meetings because they've convinced themselves that without it, they're never going to be that they'll go and drink again. Well, when you feel through your big feelings, like really feel through them, and maybe it takes several years to do it. It did for me, but on the other side of feeling all your feelings, you don't want to drink anymore. The desire just isn't there.
I've answered my own question in my head. I'm sorry. I'm not going to ask it.
And you
Sorry, Benzie,
manifested a
for making me
cat.
do some work. Yeah. Oh, dude. I manifested this angel a few years ago. She is an absolute treat.
Well, you might as well ask the question and answer it yourself so we know what you were thinking.
Well, yeah, I was thanks, John. I was curious about patience, and I was, I guess, trying to put into words a question as to why don't we have patience, or why isn't patience discussed, or why isn't it communicated as such an important virtue for us in our adolescence or in our development or growing up? Why is patience something that is so easily struggled with? And I'm just thinking about experiences in my life, and people that I work with, and just friends of mine, and we want everything so quickly, and that might be enough for us to start taking steps. But then, yeah, when we get bumped, or when things don't happen as we expect them to. A mate of mine has this great quote. He says, "We overestimate what we can achieve in 1 year, but underestimate what we can achieve in 5." And I think that's a really interesting way to look at it. In my life, that proves true every single time. But yeah, why is patience such a hard virtue to to adopt, to live? And I guess my answer to that was, well, perhaps it just isn't something that is placed with high importance in society, or in yeah, I was just playing around with that in my head, and I thought the question was
Yeah.
redundant.
I I think the reason that people have a trouble with patience is because they don't know to how to sit with uncomfortable feelings. And being patient is building out a container for yourself to be present. And when you're present, you're going to feel everything that you haven't been feeling. And it will be temporarily uncomfortable for a season. And then on the other side of that, you will be massively impactful in your world. But the patience requires that you be present. And in being present, you're going to have to feel whatever discomfort you've been pushing down and shoving down. And so instead of practicing presence, is really what it is. Patience is presence. Instead of practicing presence, we instead manically spin over the things that we're not getting, and do whatever we can to avoid that agitation that something isn't here yet. And then because of that, we hold it at arm's length forever, because we never become a vibrational match to it, because we're always avoiding the agitation, which is actually showing us what we need to heal in our nervous system in order to actually call it in. And so in true alignment, when you're totally aligned with the thing that you want, when you've cleared and released all of the trauma and all of the discomfort that was preventing you from having that, the thing will show up. You don't need to be patient anymore. Patience is basically the label that we give. I'm unwilling to feel my feelings. So because of that, it's going to take a longer period of time. Or
Yeah,
we're not honoring the gestation period.
yeah.
Like nobody has to tell a pregnant woman, well, just be patient. It'll be here in 8 months. Like everybody just understands that there's a gestation period. Well, there's a gestation period on everything. And so some of it is an expectation thing. Like, yeah, if you want a field of corn, it's going to take a season to grow. The farmer doesn't stomp on the ground and say, why aren't these darn seeds grown yet? I say that all the time because I think it's such a great analogy from Abraham Hicks, but everything has a gestation period, and we live in a dense physical reality where even though time is an illusion and we can collapse it to some extent, there's still a linearity to how things come to be. And that linearity is directly relational to how much do we believe in that linearity.
Yeah, what an interesting perspective. Yeah, the expectation thing rings really true to me. Again, it's placing expectation on this thing that we've decided that we want. And then I guess the map between where we are and where we want creates that lack, creates those feelings of well, whatever arises, whatever is is in between you and this place, this thing in the future. And yes, suddenly if those feelings aren't felt, if that awareness isn't cultivated into steps forward, then of course it'll always be over here. Of course it'll always be over there. And I love, and again, it's been proven to me too, the right thing will present itself at the right time, but that isn't without my own action. That's not without my own discipline, my own eagerness to better myself, to learn about myself, to take steps forward, to be a better, more whole person. That presents itself as I am to a point where I, yeah, like you said, can vibrationally attract it when I'm ready. The teacher finds the student, the opportunity finds the man. And yeah, the danger of the imagination scope, to go back to that for a second, the danger of painting an idealistic future for oneself is, if that's all you've done and that creates all of the feelings of disparity that aren't felt through, then of course you'll always be in lack. Of course you'll always focus on all of the reasons why you're not that right now. And yeah, it's good to be aware of them. You can shore up weaknesses or delegate things that you're not good at, but if that becomes your self-talk, your language, that cycle or pendulum of your own conscious energy, then you'll forever be in that place of lack, of without, of not being there. No, that makes a lot of sense. You're on mute, Jonathan.
And the opposite side of that is, so I have my dream. I feel my discomfort about my dream. Now I'm aligned with my dream. That's basically how it works. But oftentimes people put their dream too far out in the future so that it can actually feel really good. One day I'm going to be a billionaire. Like they can actually get there. And so the key is to put a time limit on it. Well, I'm going to make $1 million next month. Ooh, if you've never done that before, that's uncomfortable. And so then there's all of this discomfort that comes online that was actually preventing you from having this money that you put way out in the future. But once you put a timeline on it, you were more acutely aware of what was in the way. And so if you feel really good about your dream, but your dream's not manifesting, one thing to experiment with is put a short timeline on it and then feel all of that discomfort, because that will accelerate the process.
Yeah, you'll get the bumps then.
Exactly. And you don't want to avoid the bumps. You want the bumps to come quickly and you want to integrate them quickly. You know, in Silicon Valley, there's an old saying that started in the early Facebook days of move fast and break things. That's what you want to do. You want to be competent enough to know how to fix things when they're broken, but you want to find what the broken things are as quickly as possible. And so you want reality to bump you. You just want to have the tools to be able to instantly integrate that and transmute it into more creative potential.
All right, one last one. This one might be a whole nother podcast again. So sorry if I open up a can of worms, but
All right.
I need to finish this with this one today. Okay. Quote, tacos. It's the little things, y'all. End quote.
Anyone who's ever been to Austin, Texas recognizes that there's one food group. No, there's two food groups. There's breakfast tacos and there's regular tacos. and sometimes when you're down in the dumps, you just have to give yourself something that you know you love. For me, I love tacos. I love going to a restaurant with friends. I love the social aspect of that. I love some heat in my mouth with some salsa. And so for me, tacos are something where if I'm having a stressful day, I mean, I'm carnivore right now, so I'm not eating any tacos, but it's one of those things where just the idea of tacos makes me so happy and makes me be like, oh, what a great freaking food invention that tacos were. I can have so much gratitude. You have to find whatever that thing is for you. And when you're having a bad day, you just go, man, we gonna have some tacos tonight. and you just allow yourself to be playful. The other reason that I like to post that, because I've posted it several times, is that it makes spirituality and personal growth playful. Like, it makes it fun. It makes it like, who cares what anyone says? And it also is poking fun at, like, I don't even know if anybody's reading this. I'm doing it for my own entertainment. And so for me, one, I love tacos, but two, like, it's pointing to a kind of playfulness that's like, look, none of it's real, none of it's serious, none of it matters. Let's do it the way that we want to do it.
So I hear that and I get the inclination that you're fond of tacos.
That's correct.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood. What?
I'm
And I
DoorDashing tacos right now.
Gonna break your carnivore diet just after this chat. Yeah. What would that little thing for me? Well, I do love food. I'm very lucky that food's not a vice. Like, it's not something I lean on. Very lucky because I do really appreciate food, and I love a good spaghetti carbonara, like a really good pasta. Just
Yeah.
the cream pastas are just amazing. But sorry to go
Right.
back to the. Oh, sorry.
And the interesting thing about food is that when you label food as, ooh, that's gonna make me fat. Ooh, I'm not supposed to be eating that. Well, now you're out of vibrational alignment with the food. But when you're like, oh, I love this pasta. They make it by hand at this place that I usually go to, and it's all local fresh ingredients. They make the sauce every single day. It's actually a grandmother. Like, literally, this place is owned by a grandmother and a grandfather who's all their kids work in the place. They're making the sauce as a family in the back. Let and they, like, then they sell out, like, and so it's this experience that is just, like, so precious. And of course you want to eat that, and of course when you can have that much gratitude, you're going to be in alignment with that. And if you're doing it every now and then, like, who cares if you're taking carbs into your body? Like, do the things that are deeply impactful to your soul, but then don't take it too far where now you use it as a vice, and are avoiding discomfort by, oh, I'm upset again, I need to go eat that spaghetti carbonara. Like, you have to build out enough of a container for yourself where, are you doing something from a deep place of satisfaction and gratitude, or are you doing something to avoid discomfort? And when it's to avoid discomfort, the solution is always feel through the discomfort first, and then see if you still want to do that thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so much easier to go and appreciate some awesome fish tacos with the Kewpie mayo and just fucking get them
Yeah.
in your mouth when you know that, no, well, I've worked hard this week.
Yes.
I'm grinding. I look after myself. I don't need to second guess about buying a bar of chocolate because I don't eat a bar of chocolate every day. I
Yeah.
am looking after myself and I am improving and I'm on this path. And if I want some bloody spaghetti carbonara, man, I'm gonna fucking have some
Right.
spaghetti
And
carbonara.
part of something that works in hustle harder culture that I still sometimes do, because it is a good motivator, is if you love that thing, then negotiate with yourself and say, okay, well, if you hit your sales numbers this week, you get to go there. And so negotiating with it with yourself, and allowing yourself to be bad, you can get into alignment with it, even, and you don't have to do this to get into alignment with it, but a hustle harder way to get in alignment with something is, well, I'm going to allow myself to do that if I hit all of these goals this week.
And isn't that imagination again?
Of
It's
course.
like I see it. I see myself on Friday afternoon rolling that, no, going to the Italian restaurant and ordering that spaghetti carbonara from Old Nun,
Yeah.
because I smashed this week.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so then the question becomes, did you need to have the goal trade-off in order to not feel guilty about that? Or could you have felt through your discomfort and gotten to a place where you could have eaten it without there having to be any kind of worthiness exchange with yourself? And so then that's a philosophical question that you get to decide, where you want to live at. And that's part of the fun, is recognizing that as you feel through the feelings, the thing that might come up as being most aligned is some kind of a negotiation like that. And other times it might be, you know, I really just needed to feel through that, and I was trying to cover it up. But now that I've felt through it, and now that I feel aligned, I do really want to share this place with this woman who I'm in love with, and I want to make sure that she gets to experience this, and so I'm gonna bring her there, and I'm gonna introduce her to this little old lady that runs this place, and we're just going to connect at a deeper level over something that's deeply important to me. And so then you found alignment in a different way, and so it doesn't matter how you find the alignment, you just have to feel good about your choice.
Absolutely. And that's why probably the best way, if we're really honest, and to unlearn every lesson that we've discussed on this podcast up to this point, is just go get hypnotized and change your presupposition. Pasta is good. Drugs are good. And then
I
you're
mean, that
fixed. It's
that
done.
actually does
Shortcut.
work for people. It does work for a lot of people if you're somebody who is susceptible to having your subconscious spoken to in that way. And so it's interesting because what's happening in hypnosis, they're literally just changing the subconscious data input that you're calling from. So that gets back to what we talked about at the beginning of the call. Was the past history real or not? Because if you can just transfer it to something else, did it really happen? And if it did really happen, but you remember it differently, then why does any of it matter? And this gets you into a whole philosophical quandary where of course we want to glean wisdom from the past, and we want to learn from our mistakes, but at the same time we don't want to make the past so important that it prevents us from moving forward.
Yeah, amen. And at the end of the day, it is the little things, y'all. It is
That's
the little
correct.
things, y'all. We only have right now. It's the only real thing. John, I really enjoyed this as always. I think we got through again 3 tweets.
All
Not
right.
bad.
Not
Not
bad.
bad.
Let us know what you want us to talk about next. Let us know what resonated. Let us know what didn't make any sense. Let us know where you think we're totally bananas off the wall, and we'll bring in some new topics in the next video and keep this thing going. Carl, thanks for walking us through all that, and we'll see you all later.